Recording in progress.
The regular monthly board meeting of the Alameda County Water District Board of Directors, December 14th, 2023 at 6 p.m. here. And I'm going to turn this over to our general manager quickly to go through some housekeeping after we take roll call.
Oh, sorry.
Boy, forgot already.
Forgot already. Directors Gunther,
Here.
Akbari, Huang,
Aye.
Weed,
Sure.
and Sethy.
Here, and Director Ekbari will not be with us this evening. Let's do the salute to the flag and then we'll go into the proper portion of the meeting. So, Gina, would you like to lead us? United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Thank you, everybody. And before we go into public comments, I'd like to have General Manager cover some basics here.
Absolutely. Just want to welcome everybody for joining us in our board meeting this evening. My name is Ed Stevenson and I serve as the district's general manager. Members of the public may participate in this board meeting in person or remotely by either using the Zoom application or by telephone. Any member of the public present in person who wishes to make comments may approach the speaker's podium at the appropriate time. For those participating remotely, note that the meeting agenda, staff reports, and presentation materials for this meeting are all available on the district's website at acwd.org. You may reference the instructions at the top of the agenda for how to participate using the controls in the Zoom app or your dial pad if participating by telephone audio. This board meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public for future viewing. And again, thank you all for attending. It's nice to see a number of folks here joining us in person and online. And Mr. President, that completes my housekeeping remarks.
Okay, so we'll move on to item number 3, public comments. Members of the public may address the board on any issues not listed on the agenda, which are within the purview of the Alameda County Water District. A 5-minute limit is customary. However, as board president, I may adjust the actual time. Members of the public who wish to address the board on a scheduled agenda item will be given the opportunity to do so when that item comes up. Is there any member of the public, either in person or online, that would like to address the board?
I'm seeing
Don't
no
see
hands
any
up.
in person or online. Have we received any, communications? Okay,
We have one written communication that we can talk about when we get to that item, but it is related to an item on the agenda, so we'll address it at that time.
yes, okay, wonderful. So we're going to move on to the closed public comments and move on to the consent calendar, and I will ask as board president to remove item 4.4. And I will ask for a recommendation from another board member for what to add to the consent calendar. Sorry, 4.4 is.
4.4 is the resolution appointing Marion Sue as District Secretary of the Board of Directors and rescinding resolutions numbers 06012 and 21051.
Thank you. And we have members of the family here, and so we'd like to give a special honor to her promotion. Thank you.
Okay, so this is going to be a 2-part motion. So Director Sethy, so do I have to repeat to remove 4.4 from the consent calendar as part of my motion?
Sure, I think you could add that, yeah.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to 1, remove item 4.4 from the consent calendar and to add items 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, 5.8, 5.9, and 5.10 to the consent calendar, please.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Take the roll.
Directors Gunther,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye. And would somebody like to move for the
I'll move consent
calendar?
calendar as amended.
I'll second.
Directors Gunther,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye. So I will turn it back to the general manager for item 4.4 first.
Well, appreciate you removing that from the consent calendar. Historically, we've had this resolution on the consent calendar, and I'm thinking going forward, we may rather not do that. This is a big deal, obviously for the organization. The resolution, this staff report item is concerning the resolution appointing Marion Sue as District Secretary of the Board of Directors. Unfortunately, it also rescinds resolution numbers 06012 and 21051. I believe 06012 has to do with appointing Gina Marcoux District Secretary. Now, these aren't effective until December 29th, but this is a big deal, and I'm thrilled to welcome Marion into this role. It's an important role for the organization. It's an important role for the board and for everybody in here and for the public too. And as described a bit ago, Marion was the successful candidate in a really broadly advertised, very competitive recruitment with a lot of very qualified people involved. And Marion showed that she was absolutely, it was really a confirmation that Marion is fully prepared, highly qualified, and great for this role and for the district. So I'm thrilled that to recommend this resolution for the board.
May I make some comments real quick? And I'm going to ask Marion to also comment. So we are about to begin our 110th year as the oldest county water district in the state of California. And during that entire period of time, we've only had 10 general managers. I grew up knowing 8 of them. And we've only had several attorneys for the water district, only 4 since 1954, including Mr. Miyake. And we've only had a very selective number of district secretaries in our history too. I believe less than 10 in the entire history. And we know their names because of their signatures on all of the most important documents that are signed by the district, by the board president, by the district secretary, and by our general counsel, whoever that was. So it is with great honor that we are promoting you to this position. You've been under the great tutelage of the outgoing secretary of the board, who's been here for 25 years. And so I personally am wishing you the best of luck in leading us as an organization. You have quite a responsibility on your hands. Did you want to say, any other board member want to say something?
I'm just going to say welcome, Miriam, into the new position. It definitely has been a pleasure working with you when you were paralleling Gina, having you taking care of us, knowing our quirkiness. I am actually a little bit torn in saying, is this supposed to be congratulations or my condolences? We are 5 very opinionated, sometimes stubborn directors that you would have to work with. So I will thank you in advance for your patience with my quirkiness, and I definitely look forward to working with you as a district secretary.
Certainly, thank you for assuming the role of herding the cats. We greatly appreciate, and I'll have more words for Gina later. Looking forward to it. Congratulations.
Marion, before the board president completes this series of commendations, and welcome to the job. And we look forward to working with you. It's been an you've been with us now for some time and learned the idiosyncrasies of the various board members. So we greatly appreciate your support and help.
Okay, thank you so much. I've been in this role for 2 years as Assistant District Secretary, and I know those are some large shoes to fill, and it's been a pleasure working with Gina. I know it'll be an honor to work with each one of you.
All right, thank you, Marion, and my fellow colleagues on the board for their comments. Hang on here.
Staff's recommendation is that the board by motion adopt a resolution appointing Marion Sue as district secretary effective December 29, 2023, and rescinding resolutions 06012 and 21015.
I welcome moving this.
I'll move staff recommendation.
Second.
Directors Gunther,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye. Thank you.
Welcome.
And thank you to Marion's.
And thank you to Marion's family for joining us this evening. It's a great treat to have you.
Would it be appropriate to have a photo op with your family here in front of the board?
We can do that. I'm not dressed in my suit and tie today. I decided to wear
Would you like to borrow a
red
coat?
and green with a Christmas tree.
Would you like to borrow a tie?
No, no.
Yeah, I think it'd be great.
I have no plaque to hold or anything.
Well, you can bring your family up, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Welcome, guys. Thank you. And now you know where your wife and your mother has been, like evening after evening after evening, and you're welcome to come back anytime.
I also would like to make a recommendation that maybe in our future aqueduct that there be a profile of Marion. And I know she's very accomplished in some other things in her activities in life, including being the writer of, I think, 3 children's books? Yes, so welcome again on board. All right, so we will move on to item 5.1, reorganization of the Board of Directors, our annual December affair. And so I'm going to turn it over to staff to help us through this reorganization.
Sure thing. Thank you, President Sethy. So item 5.1 is, as you said, reorganization of the Board of Directors. California Water Code, section 30520 provides that the Board of Directors shall, 1, elect one of their members president, and 2, may elect one of their number vice president. Pursuant to section 2.2 of the Alameda County Water District Board Rules and Code of Conduct and Resolution 1871, adopted December 10, 1970, this election is typically held at the first regular board meeting in December of each year. That's tonight. The directors who are elected president and vice president assume office at the close of the meeting at which they are elected. So staff recommends that the board adopt resolutions electing 1, a president, and 2, a vice president of the board.
Do we do this under the same motion? Both president and vice
You
president?
could do it under 2 if you wanted, but what staff's recommending by 1 motion.
Okay,
Yeah, there are 2 separate resolutions, so I would do this one. You could do both resolutions at the same time, but it might be cleanest to just do one at a time.
okay. Well, I will lead off then, and with great regard for Vice President Gunther, I'll nominate him to be the president of the board for the next year.
I'll second.
Directors Gunther,
Wait a second.
Three votes here.
Yeah, you can abstain if you want, or no, it doesn't look like it matters.
It's not junior high school. It's all right.
Point of disease, he's not here tonight.
Yeah, right. Take the roll.
So Director Gunther,
Aye.
Director Huang,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye. And I would, in succession, like to nominate Director Huang for being Vice President of the Board for the next year as well.
Second.
Directors Gunther,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye. This is my third time being president of the board in 13 years. Jim's gonna have to wrestle this gavel from me. I enjoy this job, to say the least. Okay.
I
So
thought we
are
had
we
another
clear,
Trump situation.
Mr. Miyake?
Yeah, so as your general manager pointed out, this will become effective at the end of this meeting, and so you continue to conduct this meeting as board president.
Okay.
Sethy?
If we take a break, I might hide the gavel. So item 5.2 is adoption of the 2024 calendar of regular board members and board workshop and special board meetings, which we've all had a copy of for the last month. So do I have a motion on that item?
I'll move staff recommendation.
Second.
Second by Director Gunther.
Directors Gunther,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye. So we're up to item 5.11. It's an occasion of the incoming of the guard and the outgoing of the old guard. And so we have before us a resolution honoring Georgia H. Marcoux upon her retirement from district services after 25 years. So I'm going to open it up to the board first, and then any member of the public or employees to make comment. Go with the board first.
And Gina, thank you for extraordinary service and help in keeping us out of trouble. Personally, probably collectively. Done an extraordinary job and just amazing. So thank you.
This is my turn. Hey, Gina. So I think you'll hear a lot about in your official duty, you kept all of us out of trouble in compliance with all the requirements. But what's unsaid is all the little things that you do for us, right? From making sure that you know our quirkiness in hotel preferences to making sure that there's meal when you know we're going to have a long board meeting so that we won't get all hangry and make the meeting even longer. Those are nice little thoughts that you always think of. I mean, down to making sure there's Diet Coke for me. Hey, you take care of us so well, and you spend a lot of time to getting to know us to make sure that we have everything we need to do our job. I really appreciate that. That's not something that's in your job description. I don't think part of your job description as district secretary is making sure Director Huang doesn't get too hangry and went off script. Definitely appreciate that. Your kindness, the fact that you organize a lot of events and be part of the ACWD family. And I know somebody is here that might want to say thank you, but just the fact that you spent time staying online when we're in closed sessions, just to make sure that if there are members of the public that show up during our sometimes hours-long closed session, that there will be someone here to make sure that they know we're still in our session. There are just countless little things that you think of that you do just to make sure to represent ACWD so well. Definitely appreciate it. And thank you for all the late hours. Were you with us when we stay here till 1 a.m. till the bitter end? Thank you. Thank you for your service. Have a great time in your retirement. I heard you might be traveling as part of your retirement plan. If that is the case, let me know where you're going to be. I might get inspired.
Thank you, Gina. I said herding cats. Well, yeah, we could be herding cats. And you've kept me, you keep us all out of trouble. Just all the stuff that people don't realize going on behind the scenes to keep the board moving forward is phenomenal and greatly appreciated. One of the things I'm disappointed is that, I finally got to Greece, the Greece islands, and now you're leaving. I'm losing my source of information. But that's okay. I really, really hope you the best. It's very bittersweet to see somebody retire. But on the other hand, it's wonderful. It's a joyful thing. And enjoy your time with your family and your travels. I'm sure you will. And, hopefully the nightmares about us and the boards will slowly dissipate into the past. You won't wake up in a dark sweat and, screaming our names out that we're Form 700's not in yet.
Well, it's not December 29th yet. Don't scare Marion away.
And the other thing I have to ask though, are my minutes of arrival early banked gonna transfer over?
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay. Well, Gina, I grew up in this community and have followed local government since I was really young. And I can hardly remember somebody that reported to a mayor or school board superintendent or the water district here that has the longevity that you have put in. It is very rare in local government. And your name is going to live in perpetuity in all of our historical documents. So you will definitely not be forgotten, even generations down the road when people are looking up, the historic documents behind different activities that a future water district will be working with. So you will be embedded in time. And I hope you come back and visit.
I will when I'm in the area.
Yes.
And you can zoom in anytime.
Yeah, definitely. But don't count on it.
So enjoy retirement and everything else. And we have a very special plaque. And so I'm going to ask if somebody can take a photograph.
Do you want to get it?
Want to do
Yeah,
public comment?
we can adopt the
Pass the
resolution so
resolution first.
that when the signatures show up on the photograph, that it won't be, a bootleg resolution. If you don't mind, I actually have just a couple of words I'd like to say too. And I think the board expressed it really well that the impact that Gina has on all of you and all of us. And that's felt by everybody else in the organization too. This is a big deal for the organization. She's obviously been a huge resource to the board, to the executive staff, but to so many others throughout the organization. And one of the things that I learned upon assuming my role was how much of the machine she makes work. And I'd been here for a couple of decades before I even started to learn that, because it's so seamless. It is done with just deft and expertise, and we can't make mistakes in those areas. And she has been just so rock solid, and so a tremendous resource for the organization, but also big culturally. I can't tell you, since her retirement was announced, how many people got mad at me for allowing it to happen. And I swear I've done my best to prevent this, but I only have so much say. And so she has had a huge impact on the culture of the organization. And Gina, I also just want to thank you personally, because she was, I think, the biggest part in helping me assume my role. And it dawned on me recently that you talked about tenure, that Gina's done this. I'm the third time she's done this. And she's gotten really good at it. Fourth time? Okay, sorry. I missed one of those 10. Gina, you've been a great help to me and I truly appreciate it. And, if things look like they're working, it's in large part to Gina and her role and her ability to make things work. So, on behalf of all of us staff and the organization, we do appreciate you, Gina, and your support for all of us, your support for the district and our customers. And we're grateful for that. So thank you for allowing me.
Those are very kind remarks. Are there any other employees or members of the public that would like to address this resolution? Yay, we have one member of the public.
Yes. President Sethy, members of the board, my name is Ken Nishimura. I am a member of the public. My service address is a matter of record. I'd like to take this time to congratulate first of all, thank, as a member of the public, the outstanding service rendered by Ms. Marku to the district. I have known her in her role for, I think, the entire tenure since 2006 when she ascended to her current role before general managers. She has responded professionally and courteously to all requests that I have made as a member of public, both through oral and written comments, sometimes and always faithfully acting upon inputs, sometimes suggestions in quotes, but at all times putting the district in its the best foot forward for the district. So I'd like to thank her for her dedicated service and wish her the very best in her retirement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nishimura.
Thank you. Any other employees? Okay, we'll close public or, oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe I could just say briefly that I know there's a couple folks in the audience and online, and so many of us have appreciated Gina all these years. Not only, I mean, she's amazingly talented and patient with so many of us in our many work endeavors, but also she's touched so many of us with incredible kindness. I just wanted to note that. I know she'll be missed throughout the district. So thank you very much.
With that, I'll return it back to the board for a recommendation on the resolution motion.
I'll move to approve the recommendation and it's one of those passing points in our history where we lose a really, really good employee who will hopefully be on call. Thank you.
I'll second.
Unfortunately, I have to ask our district secretary to take the roll.
Well, that's what we brought to tonight, actually.
Directors Gunther,
Aye.
Akbari, Huang,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye, thank you. So let's take a little time out for a little photo session here.
Who's gonna take the picture? You're always the one taking the picture.
I'm glad I got my good signature on here.
I'm going to take this with the whole board.
After that one, can the rest of the board join you?
I think that'd be good.
Okay, the three of us want to.
Bring everybody else up, please.
We're inviting ourselves into.
I get to speak now?
Yes, you must. Let's not get to.
Well. Stole my thunder because I have some of the same things that you said to me in my little big speech here. Okay. Sorry. Members of the board, executive staff, colleagues, and members of the public. Tonight is bittersweet for me. I'm filled with mixed emotions. On one hand, I'm excited about the new chapter that awaits me in retirement, but on the other hand, I'm sad to bid farewell to you all. As you know, I started with the district back in 1999 and decided to leave a year later to go work in HR for a startup in the tech industry. I realized almost immediately that I'd made a terrible mistake. When layoffs were happening all around me, I knew that working in a stable industry was more appealing than the salary I was bringing home. And I knew that I had to do whatever I could to return to ACWD. Luckily, a temporary position opened up, so I went for it. And the rest is history. I'm grateful for the second opportunity to work at such an incredible organization. I've enjoyed working with everyone, and I've made some incredible lifelong friends that I'll miss, but I know we'll keep in touch. I know I don't hold the record for being the longest tenured district secretary, but I believe I tie the record for working for the most general managers, board to be exact. Paul Perrano, Walt Wadlow, Robert Shaver, and now Ed Stevenson. When I finally decided to retire, I started getting second thoughts. But shortly after, I learned that my oldest daughter, Constance, and her husband, Alex, were expecting. And I was finally going to become a yaya, which is a grandmother. That news put my mind at ease, and that confirmed that I was doing the right thing. I'm now the proud yaya of Darlene Panayota. She'll be 2 months tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to spending as much time with her as possible. In fact, they're on a plane right now coming to see me. Working full-time while raising 3 daughters was challenging, to say the least. But now I get to make up for that, as I'll be moving to Arizona to be with my 2 youngest daughters, Marianne and Alexis. The first reaction I get when I tell people about my move to Arizona is they say to me, you know, it really gets hot there. I'm like, well, I'm from Africa, so I can get used to that. In closing, I want to thank my family, my partner David, for putting up with my schedule of working long hours on board meeting nights. And I'd also like to express my deepest appreciation to each and every one of you for your support over the years. You'll definitely be in good hands with Marian, and I know she'll do an amazing job. So thank you all.
President Sethy, I just wanted to point out, we did get 2 public comments on that item. One was from somebody, Gina mentioned, David. His note was, congratulations, my love, well done. I'm so very proud of you. You are nothing short of extraordinary. And another one was from a coworker, Selena, who said, congratulations, Gina, I will miss you terribly. I think she speaks for many of us.
An emotional moment for all of us. So we will move on to item 5.12, which is a human resources issue that we'd like to dispense with. So I'll turn it over to staff here.
Okay, just seems difficult. We don't have a great transition from the one kind of item to the next. Item 5.12 is consideration of an amendment to the meter cross-connection worker 1 classification to provide for an additional certification, and consider a resolution adopting revised fiscal year 2023-24 salary schedules. And for this item, I'll turn it over to our Director of Finance and Administration, Mr. Wunderlich.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Good evening, members of the board and public. The district recently recruited for 2 vacant meter cross connection worker positions, and the successful candidates transferred from the utility worker series. Upon evaluation of the transfer, staff recommends a realignment of the salary to be consistent with the utility worker 2 salary range, provided that the meter cross connection worker 1 would also be required to obtain a cross connection control specialist certification within 3 years of assignment to the classification. Approval of this item will help achieve strategic plan goal 4.2, maintain employee retention by encouraging and valuing work efforts and skills. And the recommendation on this item is by motion: 1, authorize the general manager designee to update the meter cross connection worker 1 classification specification, and 2, adopt a resolution approving revised fiscal year 23-24 salary schedules to update the salary range for the meter cross connection worker 1 to align with the utility worker 2 salary range. And just by way of some additional background, we did go through a meet and confer process with the union that represents this classification to reach this resolution. So they're fully on board with this. And these particular employees in this classification work on, one of the main things they work on is backflow devices and testing and that type of work.
Thank you, Mr. Wunderlich. First, I'll open it up to board comments and then.
I just note that the more multi-qualification candidate employees we have, the better off we are. And so finding individuals that can be plugged into various components is possibly the most cost-effective way to run a district. And when I did a number of studies for the Air Force on manpower and engineering organizations, and that was a primary goal in each case, to find individuals so you could slot into the various tasks that came up, each one requiring professional certification. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none. Any public comments? Seeing none, I'll move this item for approval. Do I have a second? I'll second. Take the roll.
Directors Gunther,
Aye.
Akbari, Huang,
Aye.
Weed,
All right.
and Sethy.
Aye. We'll move on to item 5.13. And again, I'll turn this over to staff for this item here.
Thank you, President Sethy. The title of item 5.13 is a blatant exceedance of our rules related to how long titles can be, but this was a special exception. This item is consideration of terms and conditions for an updated memorandum of understanding between the Alameda County Water District and Operating Engineers Association Local 3, and an updated compensation schedule for unrepresented employees to incorporate changes to state law related to reproductive losses, or SB 848. And again, I'll turn this one over to Mr. Wunderlich.
Right, so periodically there are changes in state laws that necessitate changes to our employee benefits. And so when that happens, we do go through a meet and confer process with our unions. On October 11th, 2023, the governor signed a bill into law allowing for up to 5 days of time off work for reproductive related losses. This legislation, SB 848, was referenced, acts as a subset of the state's bereavement leave law and increases an employee's leave entitlements for a reproductive loss. These benefits will also be extended to unrepresented management, confidential, and professional employees in compliance with state laws. And approval of this item will help achieve strategic plan goal 4, improve workforce recruitment, maintain retention, and enhance employee engagement. And so the recommendation is by motion 1, authorize the general manager or designee to finalize an updated memorandum of understanding between the district and the Operating Engineers Association Local 3 to incorporate reproductive loss benefits as required by SB 848. And 2, adopt a resolution updating the compensation schedule for management, confidential, and professional employees to incorporate reproductive loss benefits as required by state law under SB 848. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the board? I'll make a brief comment. It was our former state lawmaker, Bill Quirk, from our local community that initiated this Senate bill. And in my own discussions with him, I was very much in favor of what he was seeking out, which was broadening of the coverage for different types of circumstances and individuals, while at the same time getting rid of the loopholes that were allowing people to abuse their privilege to take time off. And so it expanded coverage, it expanded time off, covers a lot more individuals and circumstances, and that, so I'm very much in favor of our adoption of this set of terms that we've reached in the memorandum of understanding with our employees. So that's my only comment. Don't see any others from the board. Any public comments? Let's see any. So I'll move this item too for approval.
Second.
Directors Gunther,
Aye.
Huang,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye. We'll move on to item 5.14. And again, I'll turn this over to staff. We do have a letter of communication to our board members from the Building Industry Association. And so I don't know whether we need to read this into the record or just accept it.
Yeah, we'll actually cover that as part of staff's presentation. We'll show it on the screen and it'll also be included in the record. The letter itself is on the website together with this evening's board packet materials under the line item of supplemental materials. And we'll talk through that this public input here shortly.
Okay.
So item 5.14 is a review of preliminary results of the facility connection charge study and setting a public hearing to formally consider updated facility connection charges. And again, continuing with the theme so far this evening, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wunderlich.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. So the way we'll handle this item is I'll give a brief introduction, and then we have with us this evening Sydney Alm, the district's financial analysis supervisor, and Rick Simonson, a senior vice president with HF&H Consultants, who has been working with us on this study. And so after I kick it off, they will give us a presentation. At the conclusion of their presentation, then I'll bring it back to this comment letter and kind of where we're at with that. But all we're asking for from the board tonight is actually to set a public hearing for 2 months from now. So there's no actual action on fees tonight. So I just wanted to get that out up front. So district staff worked with HF&H Consultants to update the district's facilities connection charges. The facilities connection charge, or FCC, is a one-time capital charge assessed against new development connecting to the district's water system to cover a proportional share of capital facility costs that were constructed or will be constructed to accommodate that additional growth in our system. Capacity charges were last studied in 2019 and have been adjusted annually by the change in the construction cost index for the San Francisco area. Staff recommends maintaining the current comprehensive approach to FCC calculation that includes both a buy-in to reflect the value of existing facilities that support new connections, as well as an incremental cost component that reflects growth share of future capital projects. As required by the Mitigation Fee Act, staff recommends the board set a public hearing on February 8th, 2024 to consider adopting the proposed revisions to the district's FCCs that would become effective then on May 1st of 2024. At the public hearing, the district also will consider a facility connection charge report. And a draft version of that report is included in today's board packet. And so this staff report will be supplemented by a staff presentation this evening, and approval of this item will help the district meet strategic goal 3, improve the district's financial stability and transparency. And so as mentioned, the recommendation for this evening is by motion set February 8th, 2024 at 6 p.m. as the date and time for a public hearing for consideration of the proposed revisions to the district's facilities connection charges and the facility connection charge report. And so with that introduction, I will turn it over to Mr. Simonson to lead us through the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Wanley. Good evening, members of the board, members of the public and staff. So I'll kick this off, just present you the overview of our presentation this evening. We'll cover the facility connection charge study update, which Mr. Simonson will go over in more detail. I will come back and discuss SB or Senate Bill 330, Housing Crisis Act, and what the district is planning or how the district plans to be in compliance with that as it relates to our rate and fee schedule. Then we will also discuss with you, share with you our thought on facility connection charges and billing approach. We're proposing changes to one of our type of housing unit. And then staff recommendation, you already heard that, so we'll present that to you again, and then we'll go over next steps. So for now, I will hand it over to Mr. Simonson.
Good evening, members of the board, members of the public. I'm Rick Simonson, Senior Vice President with HF&H. And for tonight's presentation, I'll quickly give a background and introduce what the facilities connection charges or capacity fees are, what the current charges are, an approach to our Nexus study on how we determine the proposed charges. Then we'll go through those proposed charges, both the buy-in component as well as an incremental component. And then we'll move on to next steps. So with that, just a brief introduction on what connection or capacity fees are. They are development impact fees that are authorized by the Mitigation Fee Act. And of particular note, within the California Government Code section 66013, is this particularly relevant in that these fees or charges shall not exceed the estimated reasonable cost of providing service. So how do we determine that? We determine that through the study in this establish that nexus of the relationship between what development will need and the impacts of that new development on the district's water system. And as mentioned earlier, this is a one-time charge when the developments actually connect to the system. Next slide. So just a brief overview here of your current connection charges. There are different customer classes and are charged accordingly. Residential is on a per dwelling unit basis, and that does differ from single family or multifamily or dormitory. And dormitory is kind of a subset of multifamily, for example, a senior living facility. You'll see the charges do differ amongst those residential customers, but it is on a per dwelling unit basis. In addition, the non-residential is charged based on their meter size, with the base charge at 5/8 inch meter, and you can see it increases as the meter increases, as that indicates more capacity is necessary to serve that customer. And we do have it broken down into two components. I'll get into a little more detail of how that's calculated with this update. So there are 4 steps when we undergo the Nexus study. First, we have to identify those facilities that will benefit growth, either existing facilities that have capacity or future facilities that need to be constructed to accommodate that growth. Step 2 is to derive the value of those facilities that have been identified to benefit growth. Step 3, determine the capacity that those facilities, either existing or future facilities, will provide. And lastly, as you calculate the connection charges, with the results of step 2 being the numerator and step 3 being the denominator, it's simple math from there. Next slide. So the approach when looking at connection fees, we've used an approach that's consistent with the American Water Works Association M1 manual. It discusses 2 different methodologies, a buy-in method, which is for more mature systems where you still have capacity within that system that can accommodate that growth without having to build more facilities. which is contrasted with the incremental cost method. The incremental method is based on the value or cost to expand the system beyond what the existing system can accommodate. And in your case, these two methods are both appropriate. So we have a combined method, meaning there's still some capacity left in your existing system to accommodate the growth. But in addition, you'll need to construct additional facilities. So we've combined the two, and that's why your current fee has both the buy-in and incremental. This is the same approach from the last study 5 years ago. Next slide. So how do we do that? So put together a couple slides. First, looking at the buy-in component. The approach is to, as I mentioned first, we have to value the system for what your current facility is valued at. So we start with the district's fixed asset listing. So tens of thousands of assets are what we call RCNLD, which is replacement cost new less depreciation. So we take the original purchase price and when it was installed, bring those up to today's dollars using the construction cost index, because a lot of these facilities are 30, 40, 50 years old. We bring it up to replacement cost new dollars today, but then depreciate that as well, as there has been depreciation over time and the facility should be valued at their current condition. There are a few things that we do remove from that calculation. First are what we've labeled services here. There are some pipes, the smaller pipes that really just benefit specific areas or subdivisions that won't be made use of by growth. So we want to subtract that so they're not paying for those smaller pipes that they will not utilize. In addition, the meters and meter installation, so the specific meters at every location, those aren't going to be utilized by growth. They'll have their own meter and pay for their own installation. So we remove those from the value of your system as well. And then lastly, quite a few of the assets on the district's fixed asset listing were actually funded through debt. So we want to make sure we don't double count those costs. So we remove any outstanding principal that has yet to be paid. So growth, because once they do connect, they'll become ratepayers and will help pay off that debt. So to avoid double counting, we remove that as well. So we get a net about 541 million for value for the existing system. That's our numerator. Then we look at the existing capacity. Who is connected and how much is the capacity that the system can provide right now. And we look at EMU, so the equivalent meter unit. This is that 5/8 inch meter as a baseline. What's the equivalent for all the different customer classes? Then through the simple math, with the numerator being the value, denominator being that capacity, we get the 3,651 per equivalent meter unit. Next slide. So that's the buying component where we look at existing facilities and use your fixed asset listing. The next component, or incremental, we look at future projects. So with the district staff help, looking at over the last 20 or the next 25 years of capital projects, we value the amount of those projects that are related to providing additional capacity to growth. And that's roughly 420 million. You have been collecting connection fees over time, so we take that into consideration with this facilities fund, that the monies that have already been collected, about 77 million, so we don't want to double count that as well, so we remove that from the CIP. Again, to get our numerator for the incremental, it's about 342 million. We divide that by the projected growth over the next 25 years as shown here. About 44,623 equivalent meter units can be accommodated by these expenses. So again, we divide to get 7,666 for the incremental component of the fee. So when we add the two together for that facilities connection charge, 11,317, that's per EMU, or that 5/8 inch meter. And that becomes the baseline. So single family, that's the equivalent meter unit, is one, so 1 times 11,317. That's how we get that charge. And then we apply the capacity multipliers for each of the different customer classes. Multifamily and dormitories use less capacity, use less water, so they are a fraction of that one. And then for non-residential, that baseline 5/8 inch meter, it increases as the capacity for the larger meters also increases. For example, a 1 inch meter provides 2.5 times more capacity than a 5/8 inch meter based on the flow through the meter on a gallons per minute basis. So you see that graduating up to the 8 inch meter there. So how do you compare to others? That's a question we often get. So you're about right in the middle with the single family facilities from your current to proposed. You won't change positions. From your most closest neighbors, quite low. East Bay Mud, Contra Costa Water, much more, and then Dublin San Ramon Service District there at the high end. So your relative position amongst your neighboring agencies does not change with this about 14% increase. We also looked at commercial connections. Next slide. And again, you're on the lower end. And with this increase, you won't change position. And other agencies may be looking at their fees in the next few years as well, that typically are adjusted every 5 years. And with that, I will pause here before turning it back over to Cindy. If there's any specific questions on any of the material I've covered, I'd be happy to answer that.
A couple of questions.
Yes.
Where we have a requirement for fire flows on a single family residence so that the meter size has been moved up to 1.5 inches for something that they hope they'll never use. Is that an exemption built into your system?
Yes, that's why the single family is a fixed amount, not tied to the meter size. So all single families will pay the same based on the 5/8 inch meter, because we understand there may be additional capacity for fire flow that's not used.
Second, how are you addressing ADUs?
ADUs have not been addressed in this study, but what you can do and what we've done in other areas is looking at on a per fixture unit basis. If you have additional fixture units for an ADU, quantify what that additional capacity is being provided. And with the calculations on a per EMU basis, you can make that calculation.
To my understanding, we've not required a separate meter to date, but we could.
You could.
Thank you.
Other questions right now? Fine.
If I could offer just a couple of items too, and that is in the extremely rare case that a single family home requires a meter as large as 2 inches or larger, we actually do require that they pay on the non-residential scale. But a home that requires a 2-inch meter would typically be an exceptionally large home, probably in the hills where there are other issues where you need that type of capacity. So I just wanted to clarify that there can, I think we have like less than 10 of these in our whole service area, but there can be that rare exception. And we'll get into the situation with ADUs a little bit more and as Mr. Alm continues the presentation as well.
And if one more on irrigation meters, where it's requested that we have a separate meter for irrigation, does this impact sub-metering or is only on the main meter?
I think.
This would have no impact on sub-metering.
So looking at and if one had a fire suppression system put into a building, is there a fee, which requires commercial buildings could require up to a 6-inch main coming in? Is there an exemption for fire
Yeah,
suppression?
we don't. So for non-residential, they would have a dedicated service line for fire suppression. And my understanding, and Sean will correct me here if I'm wrong, my understanding is we do not charge a connection charge for the dedicated fire line, just for the normal service line.
That's correct. Thank you.
Yeah, and so kind of in that way, treating single family homes the same and not charging more because of a fire line just makes our treatment of them the same as a commercial customer.
I'll leave with one more facetious comment. City of Fremont has decided no longer to have a density by units per acre, but rather than to allow the floor area ratios with as many units as can be put into one of these particularly mixed use developments in the old town areas, to which it was noted that we do have a dormitory rate. So, thank you.
No other board questions right now? Mr. Wunderlich, where do we go from here?
We'll turn it over to Mr. Aum to continue with the presentation. We have a few more slides.
Okay, so we'll jump to the next slide and we'll talk about SB 330, as I mentioned earlier. So Senate Bill 330, Housing Crisis Act of 2019 was passed in 2019 as a response to the housing crisis. Really, SB 330 is based on the idea that needed housing has already been planned by local communities, in this case, the three Tri-City. The bill aims to increase residential development, protect existing housing inventory, and expedited permit processing. So how is this applied to the district? So the one key element that applies to the district is the FCC. So under SB 330, the preliminary applications that are deemed complete by the local or applicable cities are entitled to specified benefits. So what it does, SB 330 locks in the facility connection charges at the time that the application is deemed complete. So I'll go through that a little bit further. So in compliance, staff is proposing to have multiple sets of FCC facility connection charges in the district's rate and fee schedule. So we're looking at two sets. One are the FCCs based on the most recent study, plus any applicable inflationary adjustment. The other sets of FCCs are the facility connection charges from the previous study that are applicable to SB 330 projects, plus applicable inflationary adjustment. Next slide, please. So the next slide, this slide here will, there's a lot of words here, but we will put all these into the rate and fee schedule. So the one set of FCC are the for SB 330 projects with applications submitted before May 1, 2024. Assume the board approve the proposed FCCs tonight at the February 8th meeting. The effective date would be May 1, 2024. So the FCC, those FCC, that date, anything the SB 330 projects that are application submitted before May 1, 2024, those FCC will fall under the then current fee schedule when the application was submitted to the district or to the applicable city. And then it would be increased annually by the inflation, which is the construction cost index. Inflationary, the annual inflationary adjustment will continue as long as that permit remains valid, quote unquote valid. So for SB 330 projects, again, they only apply to the projects that are eligible under SB 330. And we will talk a little bit about what projects those are. With applications submitted after May 1st, 2024, the FCC under that scenario would be the FCC under the newly adopted fee schedule, and that amount will increase annually based on the CCI. Again, inflationary adjustment continue for all permits until they expire. And all non-SB 330 projects will pay FCC in effect when the application seek water service. So that's no change to that. So
if I could just quickly, SB 330 protects any project with 2 or more residential units. So pretty much any project that's going on with major developers in the service area will be protected by SB 330.
So I will pause here for a quick second. I think I've think there's the slide that talks about that. Thank you, Mr. Wonderlick. Also some mixed use, and also transitional housing, as well, as a supportive housing unit would be, qualified. And the application would be, the project has to be an SB 330 project. I'll pause here for a second, see if you have any questions.
No.
Okay, thank you. So this next slide talks about ADU, that is accessory dwelling units. So we want to discuss with the board tonight our thinking or approach to both the FCC approach, how we charge for facility connection charges to pertain to accessory dwelling units, as well as the ongoing billing approach. So there's the FCC, how we charge FCC, and then how it is in our current billing system. So with this three, there's actually two type. There's an ADU and home served through the same service line. And we'll look at the ADU and home served through a separate service line. So for the ADU, the accessory dwelling units that is served through the same service line, if it's a new service or current FCC approaches, the district would charge to multifamily residential current. So after looking at the way EDU, what they are, in terms of the size, we thought it would be appropriate to propose for new service, it would be one single family plus one multifamily. That's as it relates to facility connection charges. On the billing side, currently an ADU served through the same service line as a single family is a new service. It's billing system, we classified it as multifamily residential. And staff proposed to classify it as a single family residential. The reason for reclassification that you see here on the slide is because in the case that the board would look at tier pricing or tier rate, for example, and you only want to look at single family set rate for single family different from a multifamily, this would clarify that. So we would know exactly what are the single family and then what are the multifamily, because they might have different tier rate structure applied to each one of those. So 1B, again, is ADU and home served through the same service line. So this adding the ADU, no change in meter size. So a customer has a single family, adding an accessory dwelling unit in the backyard. There's currently, the district does not charge FCC for that. The proposal is still the same, no FCC, and we don't collect data, so the billing system doesn't really know exactly how many EDUs. So we may have to rely on the city or even the county data to see how many ADUs out there, because we don't charge FCC for that. Currently on our billing system, they are classified as a SFR, so just ignore the ADU altogether. No changes in our proposal. We would still call that a single family residential unit. So on the 1C, existing service adding ADU, but the customer would want to upside on the meter, upside the meter. So currently, customer would pay two multifamily minus the one SFR. So you pay two multifamily dwelling units and get a credit for the single family dwelling unit. Under the proposal for FCC approach, that customer would pay one new multifamily residential FCC. So that would save them some money. Actually, they pay one new MFR. So that will not save them. That would increase their connection fee a little bit, 1,600. So two MFR minus a credit for one SFR versus one new MFR. On a billing side, for the existing service adding ADU meter upsize, currently is a multifamily residential. Going forward, we want to propose that being a single family residential in the billing system. So 2 here is the ADU and home served through separate service line. So before I get to that, going back to 1B, I got to mention that there's no data collection, but the district could potentially look at that and see if it's feasible or reasonable to change that approach to FCC for 1B, existing service adding ADU. So 2 is ADU and home served through separate service lines. So currently, it's FCC approach is 2 single family dwelling unit. So the proposed is 1 single family plus a multi-family unit. So the connection for the FCC would be 1,600 less in the proposed approach to that. As far as the ongoing building approach, currently, if there's an ADU and a home served through separate service line, there are considered 2 single family residential. Going forward, we think that's appropriate to call it a single family plus the ADU is a multi-family dwelling unit. That'd be more appropriate because the ADU really is just for indoor plumbing, indoor use. So that'd be more appropriate. There's no irrigation, no landscape that's served by the single family. So we wanted to discuss with you, share our thought on this, what we're proposing as far as FCC and then the ongoing building approach to ADU.
Can you, the term ongoing billing, is that a facility service charge or is that the service charge we charge monthly going forward?
Correct, the latter.
So, okay, it's actually the service charge, the ongoing service charge.
Service charge, consumption, that's in our billing
Monthly,
system.
yeah.
Correct.
Well, and then consumption being at a different rate.
Yeah, so today, it doesn't make a difference what they're called because today we have a uniform rate structure and it doesn't matter what your consumption is or what type of customer you are. But we felt it appropriate to take a fresh look at this. Should there, and again, we're not proposing any changes tonight or anything like that, but should there ever be a change in the future, it would be important to have clear definitions of what type of customer each property is.
Okay. When we made the change to not penalize people for having a larger meter for fire requirements in residential, but we did not apply that. We still applied the larger meter service charge on a monthly basis. Was that ever corrected?
No, we've changed that, like 4 or 5 years ago. So if you have a 1-inch or 1.5-inch meter and it was only upsized for fire flows, then we now bill you the 3/4-inch rate. And what we did for the service charge and what we did is we actually worked with Mr. O'Reilly during his first tenure at the district when we made that change. And we did an analysis of these thousands of accounts and the district made an express decision about which ones we believed could be served with a 3/4-inch meter were it not for the fire flows. And we made that change. And then we also created an appeals or application form for customers that didn't get that change automatically to submit if they wanted to be considered. And so we did that outreach back then. And I won't say every one was changed because some still need the 1-inch meter for their residential needs, but the vast majority were reduced.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions here? So I have some comments. About a year ago, because this has been an active discussion in Aqua on the local government committee that I've served on, and we have a special subgroup that's been working on trying to collect data from around the state, who's doing what. But I made a recommendation here that we try to work with USD and the 3 cities to see if we could come up with something consistent that everyone was agreeing to. Have we, over the last year, shared this information with USD because they're dealing with the same issues? Have we shared this information with the 3 cities where they're trying to grapple with how to address ADUs as well?
I'll bet you, oh, sorry, John, you can start, but Mr. O'Reilly might have something to say about
Yeah.
it too.
Yeah, so in terms of this specifically presentation tonight, no, I don't believe we have, but I'm sure Mr. O'Reilly has regular communications with the cities about these topics.
Yeah, we do communicate with the three cities. We have a form for ADUs. The city has basically a sign-off form that they bring to our counter for us to review and confirm that their project will require a new service line or will use the existing service line. Most of the case, I'd say well over 90% of the cases, it's a customer who has an existing service line and meter. They're adding an ADU that's attached or detached in their backyard, for example, and they're going to use their existing service line and meter to serve that ADU. In that case, we have no fee structure for that. There's no fee, just like you see on the screen now. That's the 1B case. That's over 90% of the time. We basically sign the form and turn them away. There's no fee due. If we determine that they need a meter upsize, or often they'll come to us and say that the ADU in their backyard, they want to have a separate service line and meter. They don't want it on their primary account. They want to have their own separate account for their tenant. In that case, we can assess the additional FCC as you see on the screen.
Yeah,
What is USD doing with regard to sewer connection?
USD does charge an additional rate or an additional capacity charge for the 1B case where we currently do not. It's based on square footage. It actually legally needs to be based on a ratio of the square footage that you're adding to the home or adding to your property. And we currently don't have a rate that uses that sort of data. We would have to develop a new rate, which is based on the additional square footage.
Yeah.
An ADU, do they put in a separate sewer line out to the street, or is it connected to the existing home?
It doesn't matter. They assess the fee regardless.
Okay.
yeah, and so one of the things, although it will not be a part of this process because it's separate project, but there are a number of legal limitations on charging a connection fee for this 1B scenario. And so one of the things we will be looking at probably over the course of the next calendar year is what would be required for the district to add a fee here. And potentially, if we think there's a viable path forward, bringing something to the board for consideration. Because as Mr. O'Reilly said, it's 90% of the new ADUs, and that is going to have an effect on our service requirements. And because of our lack of structure in place, we're not collecting a fee. And actually, when you look at kind of the approach to ongoing billing here for 1A and 1C, we really felt it necessary to align with 1B because that's 90% plus of the ADUs in that scenario. So it didn't seem appropriate to have a different structure for those scenarios.
Well, one of the things we discussed in our committee this recent AQUA was that various municipalities are passing ordinances that allow for the sale of an ADU on a different parcel. And there's lots of legal questions that are arising as to whether you set up a separate assessor's parcel number. How is a sale going to be made? Is it as not real estate, but personal property? I forget what the definition is here. Real property versus personal property. If there's no separate parcel number, then can that ADU be sold separately? And different communities are coming up with different interpretations, and now there's even some proposed bills in the legislature around this. So I'm trying to think ahead. What happens 10 years from now when we've got all these ADUs out there and now people are starting to exchange property or buy property, whether it's real or personal, that we don't run into problems. If the connection to the water system is through the original meter and original home, and it's not a separate line, how do you sell the unit?
One mechanism to do what you're saying is a law called SB 9. It's a lot split law that allows you to build an ADU and split your lot and then essentially end up with two parcels. We get applications from the city, planning applications that we review in development to sort of curb that and get ahead of that. So where we see an SB9 application, we tell the applicant that they need to put in a new service line and meter in anticipation of the lot being split.
Oh, that's smart.
But as you mentioned, there are other laws, I'm sure, in the works that would make that even more challenging if they don't even need to do a lot split, if they can sell property on an existing parcel.
Well, I like the thought process behind what we have here. And I think that for our Aqua Local Government Committee, for the subgroup that's working on these issues, I think we're thinking well ahead of what I'm hearing from other folks. And so I think it might be worth sharing this information at some point, like at the Spring Aqua.
Yeah, I think we'd have no concern with sharing it. And to give a little more kind of big picture view of our FCC approach, I talked a little bit about the ongoing billing, but currently for residential, you pay based on dwelling unit. You don't pay based on meter size or meter configuration. And so we really wanted to bring that overarching perspective to how we treat our ADUs. And so that's why you see trying to bring more alignment between whether it's the same service line or not.
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Riley, you're new to me here in this boardroom. What is your official position?
I'm the development services manager. I replaced Judy Rotter, who retired at the end of last year.
Oh, okay. Great. We were sorry for her loss too. All right. So, welcome aboard. And any other questions here? Don't see any questions from the public or online. Are you near a conclusion here?
Yes, yes, one more, two more slides. Thank you, Mr. Riley and Mr. Wanderley, for your response. So we're going to staff recommendation. You heard already by motion set February 8, 2024 at 6 p.m. That's the date and time for a public hearing for consideration of the proposed revisions to the district's facility connection charges and the facility connection charge report.
But before the board takes action on that recommendation or hears any other comments, we do want to, yes, thank you. We do want to address the comment that was sent in by a representative of the Building Industry Association of the Bay Area, and I'll ask Mr. Wunderlich to speak to that.
Great, thank you. So staff has reached out to the Building Industry Authority or Association as we've been embarking on this study. We've exchanged a number of information via email, also conducted several meetings. I think we've developed a pretty good working relationship. We've tried to be transparent with them with everything that we're doing here. It's the same folks that we worked with 5 years ago when we did the study, and I thought, we worked well together back then. And so what they've submitted some comments here, and one of the things that they have asked for, there's a couple of things they've asked for. One, in the last paragraph, they say that they'll be completing a peer review of our study, and our study and backup materials have been made available to them, and they have hired a consultant. And so they've asked that the board refrain from adopting a study or any fees until they've had a chance to share their peer review with us. And we've got no concern with that. Again, we're not asking for the board to approve any fees tonight, just to set February 8th as a public hearing. BIA has indicated they'll have their peer review to us in early January, and that will give staff plenty of time in advance of a February public hearing to consider if we should make any changes or not. Certainly, if we encounter any significant issues, then we may, wish to postpone that public hearing, but at least at present, we don't anticipate that being the case. One of the other things that they've requested is a phase-in of the increase. It is a 14% increase in the fees. And it's a consistent 14% net increase in each fee for each type of dwelling unit and each meter size. We've talked a little bit about SB 330 this evening, and kind of the concern from staff or the staff perspective with the phase-in and why we're not proposing a phase-in is there a couple of reasons. One is that the total dollar increase is still relatively minor relative to the overall cost of purchasing a home in this area. So we don't see this as a major driver to housing costs in terms of this change. As you saw in the comparison, even with these changes, we're still below East Bay Mud, Contra Costa, DSRC, and the other major East Bay water providers. In some cases, quite significantly less. And then getting into SB 330, what it does is, let's say somebody submits an application, and let's say they submit the application May 1st of 2024, right after we've adopted our new fees. What happens is the fee that they pay will be set at the May 1st, 2024 level, plus escalation for inflation. But it may not include escalation for reasons other than inflation, right? And so if they submit that application May 1st, 2024, it might be 3 or 4 years before they actually come and say, now we're ready to put our water meter in and pay our connection charge to the water district. But what will happen is if we do a phase in, they will not be subject to the 3 or 4 years of phase in that occur during that time while their permit, since their permit has been submitted. All they would pay is the inflationary adjustments. And so kind of the way we're looking at it is because of the impact of SB 330, that actually that almost provides like a phase in for them because of how that protects the growth in fees. So somebody who submits their application before May 1st of 2024 actually will not pay these proposed fees at all. They'll pay the current fees plus any inflation between now and when they put their water meter in. And so kind of from that perspective and that delay that's created by SB 330, again, SB 330 applies to any development with 2 or more units, right? So it applies to most developments. And so that's why kind of the staff perspective is we think doing a phase in of this increase would just add on top of kind of the delay or the protection that's provided by SB 330.
It is important to note that the application that we reference in the slides, that's the city planning application. The preliminary application with the city is what locks the fees. So they don't even, they may not even talk to us yet, at that point. They would only be talking to the city when the fees lock.
And just one final note, in terms of our rate and fee schedule, you'll see the effects of SB 330. You'll see that we'll have multiple schedules in our rate and fee schedule to account for the different years that somebody may have locked in their application. So if we were to then add a phase-in approach, our rate and fee schedule would get very, very complicated and really unnecessarily, as Mr. Wunderlich points out.
Okay, so here it says under this item 5.14 review, but we have this resolution that we need to pass.
No, there should be no resolution for this item.
Oh,
It's just by motion setting a public hearing in
okay.
February. So we would have the resolution in February.
I have one comment, but let's get the motion on the table.
I'll move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
I would encourage you to consider a way with master metered customers. We find a way to encourage sub-metering. We're going to go into water loss legislation now where we have to track individual users and the amount of water being lost. I would say easily over 90% of our new meters are going to be multifamily, and the ability to master meter them will be now a benefit to us because of some of the legislation coming through and being able to monitor efficiencies. So the technology for master metering is not, the industry is not really caught up yet. And with a good sub-metered program and a way that they could do that and have software that is integrated with our software would be helpful. Not suggesting we put it into this plan, but as you go forward, and we see this every 2 years, to give some thought to how we might do that.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's not necessarily related to the fee structure. So I see Mr. O'Reilly looking up some different things as you're making those comments. I'm sure that's duly noted for him to look into what our options are there.
It's an incentive.
Yeah.
Finance, anytime you have to talk finances, there's a potential for an incentive. Thank
Is
you.
there a public comment here?
I have a question. So as a member of the public, I am not a developer. I don't have a horse in this race personally, but as Mr. Wunderlich points out, this is a 14% increase, so it's substantial. And I haven't had a chance to read through the entire proposal in detail, but it appears that the source of this increase is the incremental cost portion. In fact, the equity buy-in portion seems to have gone down by $80 a unit. And the arithmetic to calculate the incremental cost seems to be, well, the numerator is the allocated fraction of the capital improvement program that is allocated towards assumed growth. And that was increased from 20% to 22.3%, which is a little over 10%. If you look at it on a percentage point basis, right? So if a 10% increase in the assumption will drive a proportional increase in the incremental cost analysis. And I guess that's one question I would have and would like to have addressed between now and the public hearing is what drove that increase? The second thing is, again, just viewing it as how a member of the public would interpret this, is, the district and in California in general is under substantial pressure to reduce water consumption. So when you say that this is cost driven by growth, I can understand growth in terms of new connections because we're also under a mandate to build new housing. But if you look at it in terms of growth and in terms of total volume of water sold, say in net acre foot, you're not going to have that much growth because existing customers will be mandated to reduce their consumption and the new construction will also be extremely water efficient. So when you say that you have a lot of capital improvement driven by growth, it's not that you're going to be forced to buy or build a new water treatment plant, right? If the assumption were that you were going to double the volume of water sold, and then you say, well, we need to allocate dollars to build a new water treatment plant or expand a water treatment plant to accommodate that additional volume, then it would make sense. It would be a relatively straightforward nexus. But under these conditions, the nexus between the 22.3% and the increased volume of water sold isn't as clear to me. So that getting additional clarity on those points would be nice before the public hearing. Thank you.
I can actually provide that clarity right now. So first I'll say, as a regular residential customer, you actually do have a financial interest in this because the equity buy-in component of these fees is used to offset our general fund costs for capital improvements. And so there is a direct relationship between that fee and water rate requirements. Second, in terms of the 22.6%, what we did is we worked with our urban water management plan and with the support of our water supply planning team here at the district to estimate that if you look at the connections we expect to come online between now and 25 years from now, what percentage of the overall system demand will those connections represent at that point 25 years into the future? And essentially the answer to that is that approximately 25 years, about 77.5% of the demand we expect would come from customers we have already today, and 22.5% would come from new customers added between now and 25 years into the future. And that's the basis for that 22.3% number that you referenced is based on their share of water use in the future. In terms of why the incremental component is going up, that's a part of the reason, but that's actually not the major reason why it's going up, excuse me. The main reason is actually because we have added substantially to our long-range cost estimates in our capital improvement program. And in large part, that's attributable to main renewals and what's programmed for main renewals out 10, 15, 20, and 25 years into the future. 5 years ago, when we did the study, we had very small $10 million a year placeholders in those future years. And we all know 20 years from now, we better be investing a lot more than 10 million a year in main renewals, right? Especially with what the cost of construction will be then. And so over the last 5 years, we've made a lot of adjustments to those future investment estimates, and that's what's driving a lot of this. Also, one of the major projects that's included, there's no water treatment plant that's in there, but we know we also have declining reliability from our existing sources of supply. So even if water demands aren't going up a lot because of the efficiency, it doesn't mean we don't need to cultivate new sources of supply. And the need to bring those new sources of supply on are driven not just by reliability for current customers, but also to meet the demands created by new customers that will come on in the future. And so we have a placeholder water supply project in our CIP. 50% of the costs of that are assigned to growth. And so that is also a major component. So I think I've hit on all the comments I noted. So I hope that's kind of helpful in explaining some of the things we're looking at here.
Last call. No more questions, no more audience questions. So we have a motion and a second. So
Directors Gunther,
aye.
Huang,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Sethy.
Aye. Good work, staff. A lot of
Thank you.
good work. And our consultants too. So any comments or questions about board committee reports? None from the board. I don't see any from the public. Operational reports? No? Oh. Okay.
Congratulations on.
Yeah, that was a good report. Okay, so we turn to item 6.3 staff presentations, and we've got one.
Yeah, it's not an extended presentation, but as you know, there's an awful lot going on with Delta Conveyance right now. The two of our directors are obviously fully embedded in the details, but because there is so much activity going on in the state, it's an important time in the progress of the project. Ms. Heides felt it was a good idea to just provide a very brief update to kind of bring the board along on these changes. So Ms. Heides.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. This first slide is just a number of key terms, and I think you're all familiar with these, so we can skip on to the next. And I will just briefly cover the background information since I think most folks are familiar and we don't have any public online either today. So State Water Project, as you know, is the vast storage and delivery system in the state, dams, reservoirs, aqueducts, power plants, and pumping plants spanning more than 700 miles. As you're aware, the rain and snow falls in the north and the east, but the state's major population centers are in the central, west, and south part of the state, such as here in the Bay Area. So the State Water Project moves that water to where it needs to be for urban use and serves 27 million people as well as 750,000 acres of farmland. Here locally, State Water Project meets 40% of the district's treated water demands. Next slide, please. So the Delta Conveyance Project is essentially a modernization of this system upon which we rely on quite heavily. The proposed project, which I think many of you have been out to see some of the different pieces and parts of the potential alignment, are a 6,000 CFS tunnel with 2 intakes and a pumping plant that connects the tunnel directly to the Bethany Reservoir in the Bethany alignment option, which you see highlighted in yellow on this map. There are other alternatives of a central or eastern alignment as well that have varying different potential conditions. And those are the pieces that have been considered as part of the Delta Conveyance Project in the EIR. Next slide, please. And for those who aren't familiar, this is a system of intakes, various shaft sites along the alignment, a very large tunnel, pumping plant, and an outlet structure. So these are just example photos of what those might look like. Next slide, thank you. So the Delta Conveyance Project purpose and objectives, I just wanted to touch on this again. The purpose is essentially modernizing the aging State Water Project infrastructure in the Delta. to protect reliability of our state water project deliveries in a cost-effective manner. It's also consistent with the state's water resilience portfolio. And the objectives, as we've talked about previously, include addressing sea level rise and climate change, minimizing water supply disruption due to seismic risk, protecting our water supply reliability, and providing some operational flexibility to improve aquatic conditions in the Delta. So the latest updates, which is the focus of tonight's notes, include the release of the final environmental impact report last Friday on December 8th, which is a huge milestone for the project. It's many, many pages long with volume 1, including impact analyses and a variety of associated appendices. And volume 2 includes responses to over 7,000 comments on the project that came in from around 700 different letters that were made on the EIR document. So next steps, the Department of Water Resources will have to consider certification of the EIR and approval of a project, whether that be the proposed project or one of the alternatives. But that's the process that DWR is in now, is considering what to do moving forward. And now that all the now that the final EIR has been released and all of the comments have been responded to. So that's one of the next steps happening on the side with the various state agencies. And then future project planning next steps include some additional things beyond the EIR that will need to be discussed and or carried out. So there's also discussion of a community benefits program. This would be outside of the EIR and the mitigation, and acknowledging that a lot of things will be happening in the Delta and that there is a benefit to leaving behind some positive improvements in the local community. So that's something I think you'll be hearing more about in the new year. And then there's a lot of additional permitting that needs to be done. I'm not including it all here, but if you're interested in the details, there's a link at the bottom there. There's water rights permitting and a variety of other permits that need to be worked out in order to finalize and build the project in the end. So those are the latest planning happenings. There are going to be a number of additional updates coming this spring. You know, we are awaiting DWR's final decision about the project. After that, you know, there's also work going on to update costs and benefits. And so we anticipate hearing more about that this spring. And we know that's something that the board is interested in. And so we'll be bringing that information, you know, as soon as we have it available, but we did want to highlight today just this major milestone in the project and let you know that there's going to be a lot more to come. So that's really it. Short today, but I'm happy to answer questions if you've got any on the project. We did include also in the board packet a couple of fact sheets. There's a fast facts 2-page sheet about the project that has some interesting statistics. And it really is sort of public friendly in case you get any questions. And then there's also a second sheet that's not specific to the Delta Conveyance Project, but it talks about the benefits of the State Water Project as it exists now to the Bay Area, which is something I think, as we're all aware, is not always understood what a big part the State Water Project plays in our local community. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Several. It's my understanding that the EIR identified sea level rise as 1.8 feet by 2040, but 10.2 feet for the service life of the project of 100 years. So in effect, a foot per decade. My concern is, might that become the standard for state projects, or the de facto standard? It's a more aggressive level of sea level rise than I've seen in the past, but essentially 7 feet by 2100.
Yeah, so I can address a bit about sea level rise. So the project is my understanding, and I believe it's even on one of the fact sheets. I knew you'd be interested in this, Director Weed. It's being built to be able to withstand up to 10.2 feet of sea level rise. My understanding is that was based on the latest and greatest Ocean Protection Council recommendations at the time. That is a very difficult thing to actually model what will happen to our water system at that high level of sea level rise. So as you mentioned, there's a lower level that was looked at in the modeling of the EIR, but yeah, they're still building it well above where there could be any impacts. As to what they're going to look at in the future, there's so many different models and recommendations about a range of sea level rise predictions. My understanding is the Ocean Protection Council is the one that a lot of people hang their hats on, and that one's undergoing a new look right now as well. So it may not still be the 10.2 in the long run. So we'll see where that lands, but I think they've built it well above where we think it will need to be for quite some time.
I understand that was the rise at the Golden Gate Bridge. That was the basis. I provided a webpage that from NOAA, a map of the coastal areas that you can zoom in a remarkable detail on lots and scale and show the impact of sea level rise from 0 feet to 10 feet. So I found that informative. Ironically, it did not include the Delta. It stops at Brentwood or at the Big Break. Doesn't go beyond Big Break. So it will be frightening to take a look at what the implications are.
Well, even a few feet gets you to the top of some of the levees right now.
Oh, yeah, but so they didn't do the Delta, but they do have Fremont, Newark, Union City, the shoreline, that you can see which buildings will go underwater at what level.
Yeah. Any other comments?
So that was, and then the other question would be, when do the lawsuits kick in and what, in this process? And what, might the approval be delayed due to lawsuits, or would they go ahead and make the approval of adopt the EIR and then have the lawsuits kick in?
Very good question, Director Weed. So my understanding is once DWR makes a decision about moving ahead with a project and certifying the EIR and approving a project, that's when the CEQA statute of limitations kicks in. It's 30 days. And so that would be the time frame when people can file lawsuits. But that wouldn't be unexpected given the number of, differing opinions in the Delta and the controversy of this type of a project.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I was going to add to your comments that based on my knowledge from the Delta Conveyance Finance Authority, the judge who's been dealing with the validation lawsuit in Sacramento Superior Court has indicated he would give his final ruling by December 18th. That's right around the corner. So the DWR attorney I think the judge provided his original opinion back in August. DWR responded back. I circulated the response here. And we were told that normally a judge would issue the final opinion within 30 days, but he has taken an extraordinary length of time to review the respondent's remarks. The original opinion was not favorable to DWR. So we're kind of waiting on pins and needles right now for that forthcoming final decision, because that either helps propel things forward or may even open up more lawsuits. So we'll look for what happens before Christmas here. So we move on to general manager's reports.
Certainly can. If there are no other comments or questions for Ms. Heides, I'll ping my colleagues just one last time this evening to make sure that they don't have any general managers reports to share. And I'm seeing none. So I have just one quick one, and that is I plan to take a little bit of time off after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year and the day following New Year. And Mr. Wunderlich has anxiously volunteered and lobbied to be acting general manager at that time. So I appreciate him stepping up. Beyond that, that's another Christmas gift to you all. No extended general manager's comments.
Okay, we'll move on to director's reports, and 7.1 is the Delta Conveyance Tour that Director Gunther and I went on, so I'll let you lead on that.
I was very impressed and very happy we were able to set this up. I wanted to go very badly to the previous ones. Got my chance. I think it was a terrific tour. Brings it into perspective. One of the things I was really overall impressed with was the fact that we brought our staff. They're going to be, this is a buy-in for the whole district. And to have them understand the magnitude of the project, what they're fighting for, what they're working for. Why are they doing this? That understanding, I think, is very, very valuable. I'm really happy they went. Not to mention it gave us enough bodies to have our tour, but still, I think it was a very valuable process to bring a buy-in to a project this big. Particularly with all the negativity about it, because you're always hearing the lawsuits, and it's frustrating with the lawsuits. You know, we never build another railroad across this country. I'll say that, sadly. And so I just thought it was an absolutely terrific tour. I came away with a much better understanding of the project. I was supported before of the project. I am actually probably more supportive now, having taken the tour. It just solidified my position. Thank you.
I can ditto all of those comments. I will just say that two of the most interesting parts of the tour for me were, one, you showed a picture of the pumping plant down where the water's going to be fed into Bethany Reservoir. And we were informed that that pump is actually going to be built 10 stories below ground, pumping up 100 feet to keep the overhead footprint as minimal as possible. And so that's a real innovation in the water industry. And I really liked the end of our tour when we went to the manufacturer of the fish screens. That was really interesting. And to see all the variety of fish screens they're building to deal with different purposes around the world. That was really very, very educational. So yeah, I learned a lot as well from the entire thing. So there's no other directors reporting on that. So 7.2, we had a perfunctory meeting in Sacramento. Most of it was in closed door session. There were just a couple of administrative things. And those things that were discussed over an 1.5-hour period in closed door can only be discussed in closed door here. So I really can't comment. We will probably have another meeting in January. Lastly, we have reports from Aqua. I'll start at the end of the board.
No, another Aqua conference. I was able to also attend the JPIA meeting, which was the Monday and half of Tuesday. The one question I did ask at a session was on the direct potable reuse. We had a presentation from the California staff that are preparing to release that report may have done it this week or certainly by next week. And which is all great, but I asked, what are you going to do with the permit? If you have reverse osmosis for direct potable reuse, should the permit be declared a toxic and hazardous waste with PFAS and regulated by circular? And the comment was they didn't have an answer for that, which strikes me that the direct potable reuse legislation is dead on upon arrival without a resolution to that issue. So we will see where we go with it. It's a major issue. I did come up with was able to given the map that I talked about sea level rise. Should the 10-foot sea level rise become the de facto criteria for future development, it's going to impact a number of projects. One that comes to mind is the purified water in San Mateo County, which will be at the Redwood City treatment plant, where Redwood City is currently put in a recycled water project. And when I ran it through the map, they're good to 4 feet, which would be about 40 years under this concept. But once you go over that, much of Redwood City is flooded, including this site. So if we're looking at projected lifespans of these projects, one of which in this case Bosca were invested through Bosca, the service life appears to be about 40 years. Hopefully we can get some consideration to that. I noticed that in the WIFIA loans, the Environmental Protection Agency has been anxious to spend the money that they're authorized and have not been applying sea level rise and review of some of the projects they've been approving. So again, there may be a wake-up call there. So, I also had an opportunity to talk to a member of the Hanson Bridget firm, and I'll carry that conversation on after the meeting. Thank you.
Well, let's see. I also attended the Aqua Conference down in Indian Wells. So started out, I attended the opening speaker. So Cal EPA Secretary Yana Garcia, I'm really glad to hear that she highlighted addressing the climate crisis as part of the governor's priority. That is definitely something that will impact our water supply due to climate change, and that's something that we need to pay attention to. I'm also glad to hear that one of the governor's priority is diversify water supply, which is something this district strives for. What makes me a little bit worried is the modernization of water rights, sorry, in quotation marks. That is something that we definitely need to track because it depends on what it means by modernization. It could either be positive or negative for this district. I also said in the session on voluntary agreement, that is something that I would ask staff to keep track of because that definitely will impact our water supply since it's both San Francisco and State Water Project, right? With the new Delta plan. It's a little bit depressing. Basically, I think the states, at least my interpretation is the state basically come out with really stringent requirements with a lot of curtailment in the rivers and then say, hey, everybody else, you stakeholder, work out something that's palatable for everybody. And I think that's what they call voluntary agreement. At least that's my interpretation. So please keep track of it because that is a big part of our water supply, both from the Delta and from San Francisco. Let's see. And then there's I said in yet again Prop 218 session. So this one is interesting. There's a new legislation called the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act. And apparently it's slated to be on the November 2024 ballot. I believe based on a conversation with our lobbyists, I think this one probably doesn't have that much legs, but if it's enacted, it could, with the uncertainty and the vagueness in the language, it potentially could have a lot of impact to how we do things. I think specifically, I was thinking of how we use the non-rate revenue funds. If we could still apply it to programs like Help on Tap. So please keep track of it. I know there is a counter proposal, I think Aqua is supporting, right, a counter legislation, and I can't read my handwriting. Is it ACA 13?
That sounds right.
Okay, I'm trying to decipher my own
Yeah, no, I have
handwriting.
my
That's
notes
that's
with me.
pretty sad. So that's the highlight of it. There are other sessions about affordability, conservation, and yeah, I'm actually glad that it's actually becoming an issue that somebody is actually paying attention, that we have all these mandatory conservation. But for water district, that also means that our income goes down, which means we have to increase our rates. So it's a two-edged sword, right? It's conservation is a great thing, but that also means that usually means a rate increase for our customers. So I am glad that somebody is paying attention and this is being discussed. So that's all I have.
Go next. I did attend the opening speakers session. A little disappointed. Seems to be an undertone of activism, in my opinion. And a very high level government official. A little frightening, and I think we need to keep an eye on that. I went to the voluntary agreements, and yes, it was not particularly something we're gonna have to keep our eye on, and correct me if I'm wrong. I forgot my notes done. Great, you know. But if I remember correctly, the enviros aren't even at the table, the NGOs. I don't think they're even participating. Was mentioned.
Yeah, Ms. Heidiss has a
Do
little
you-
bit of information about that.
Do you remember that? I think they said the NGOs, or a large portion of them anyway, were not even involved.
My understanding is that there are a few that are engaging, but there's definitely a welcoming invitation for more to join because there are a number that are not at the table.
Yeah, which is is very disturbing. I mean, here we are trying to work as a group, and they're not even participating. As well as the concept of, as Judy mentioned, the state just saying, oh, this is what we're gonna do. But anyway, it's still worth the effort. Because if you don't do the effort, you know, and then something comes like we don't like, well, hey, that's our fault. At least we could try. Prop 218 I went to thinking, okay, this is gonna be about rates. This will be exciting. Maybe. Oh my God. I'm glad I don't have my notes on that one because I was just writing and it's like one thing after another. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. That proposition or that thing on the ballot has to fail. That will not be good for us. Bad. In fact, it will be seriously bad for government in general. It will tie things in knots. Things will not get done. Like I said, I'm glad I don't have my notes because I took multiples on that and every single thing I think was bad, bad, bad. Region 5, I went to that, but I also went to ethics. And I have to say, I've told a few of the staff already. Ethics is like sticking a stick in your eye. I mean, I've been going to ethics training since I think 1986 with the Coast Guard. This had to be the best ethics training session I have ever gone to. And it was probably the best session I went to in this conference. Perhaps even, I didn't go to the last conference, but perhaps even to the one before that. I mean, I just came out stunned that I was like, wow, these guys were good. They didn't talk down to us. They talked with us. I was really happy that I actually went to that one. And I still need to submit my comments to Aqua about that because it was, that group deserves positive remarks, what they did. Because I've been to a lot. I've sat through torture. And this was not torture. So I have this, I said it here publicly, but I will put it to the Aqua staff. Those folks are good. They did an excellent job. And maybe one of these days, after ethics training since 1986, starting to get a message here. Wait a minute, I think I get it, folks, you know. Been that long. That's it for me.
Okay, my turn. So I was there all day Tuesday, Wednesday, and half day Thursday. On Tuesday, I specifically went down the day before so I could attend the different committee meetings. So I'm on the Aqua President's Outreach Task Force, so um, we had a good meeting there. Although I will note that there was one gentleman who's been in Aqua for a long, long time who made quite a number of disparaging remarks that were totally out of line and very offending to the women in the room. It was uncalled for and broke the code of conduct that we all agree to when we go to these kind of events. I went to the Water Management Committee too, listened into a really good program. Ms. Heides was there. That room was filled. There must have been like 250 people there. And there was a request beforehand, because I worked with that committee and at the meeting, for any proposals to work on in the next 2 years with the recomposition of committee members. I was the only one who submitted a proposal, and that was to have a subgroup focused on strictly looking at brackish water desal opportunities across the state. And I noted the governor's water report that he put out last October, where he called this out and set some goals, but I don't see much progress being made actually. And the chair of the State Water Board, Joaquin Esquivel, was there as one of the panelists for that meeting. And so I may be taking on a new responsibility because the entire board there said, this is a great idea. We'd like you to chair that subcommittee. And then the following morning, I was getting coffee very early in the morning down in the hotel, and Mr. Esquivel came up to me and he said, "You're just the man I'm looking for." And I was sharing this with John later that morning. He invited me to come up to Sacramento specifically to talk about this issue and to see how the state, CalDesal, and Aqua can work together to come up with a good Aqua strategy. And he said he's appointing a gentleman, Jonathan Bishop is his name, to work with me and that Aqua subgroup. So I thought I was just throwing out an idea, and then suddenly I'm accepting responsibility. I got a lot of good feedback on that though. Also attended the local government committee, where we really had some good discussions on paving standards, on ADUs, on a number of other issues. And I really like the focus in that group. And of course, ACWD contributed quite a bit to where the subgroup is on paving standards right now. So we got some compliments as an agency there. We also had, I attended a reception to talk about the Los Vaqueros Reservoir. We had at least 100 people that came through. We had a handout for everybody. One here is for staff. The other's for all the board members. And people stuck around. It was, you know, for 2 hours, we had people coming in and out and really trying to digest what this whole project is about. So that was good. I want to call out what I thought was an excellent session that piggybacked on Los Vaqueros Reservoir was the finance program on Wednesday morning, multi-agency water projects. And that to me was, Mr. Wunderlich was there too, was a real eye opener, because in talking about all these different types of multi-agency water projects, that Los Vaqueros Reservoir is just one of those out there in the state. I really learned a lot, especially sitting on this other board. But the one takeaway I had that was so important that every project talked about was you have to get your service agreements in place, your facilities usage agreements in place. All of those legal agreements have to be put in place in order for a project to proceed and succeed. Every single one of them, that was the focal point, the hurdle that everybody had to get over. I attended the morning program on Wednesday with everyone else here. Region 5 meeting as well. I had some other meetings that I was tied in with, so all in all, it was a really good conference. I did hear negative remarks about one thing that was kind of consistent across attendees, and that was putting the lunch from 1:30 to 3 on Thursday. Nobody thought that was a good idea. Because most people were saying, forget lunch, I'm leaving. Get on their flights back and everything. But all in all, I thought it was a really good conference. So I did want to give one last report. It's very short. I have a request that goes along with it. The Los Vaqueros Reservoir JPA board meeting was yesterday. Rather than give a report here, I'd like to request that we put this on the calendar for January. And maybe Mr. Wunderlich, if you could give a very brief update then about how we're trying to deal with our finances through the end of the fiscal year. I think that would be welcome.
Sure, I can prepare to do that next month.
So if anybody wants to read through the board packet, it's there. And
I have one item.
yeah,
Finish. As you know, I've been involved with a group on PFAS, which is organized by Edgar Timely. I have an invite to go to Yorba Linda the first Monday in February. There may be room for another staff or other board member if they wish to see probably the most advanced ion exchange project. We've had our own staff go down there in past months to take a look at that, but this may be another opportunity. And one I may require separate authorization, even though it's related to the Aqua. It's not part of their formal committee.
who is this hosted by?
Edgar Dimley who is the fellow who received the award at Aqua, is head of the Environmental Quality Committee for both Aqua and AWWA. And he has created a small group of individuals that he has brought together to get some ideas. Chad Seidel from Corona Engineers in Colorado, the Yorba Linda director, and some others, a small group of about 6 individuals. And then I've also been privy to some other emails that have not been shared with the ACWD staff that I was able to provide.
What is the date of this tour?
First Monday of February, which I think is February 5th.
Keep me informed. I might be interested.
So am I hearing a request to put on the agenda for January, board approval of expenses and so forth associated with attendance at this tour
Yes.
on February 5th?
Yes.
Okay.
our new board president will agree to it. Maybe I want to go. All right, so are there any last minute reports or anything?
Nothing from staff.
Okay. I did attend an excellent.
Sorry, just one moment.
I know.
Yeah, but it's not over yet.
All right.
Uh, Last week, and I'm gonna give my report in January. Cause I wanted to prepare a few things as handouts. But I attended a really good, Aqua sponsored Capio presentation, including Renee Gonzalez from our district, and Shireen Gonzalez was, not a presenter, but a participant. And, really learned a lot about what other water districts are doing at the communications level and innovative things that are being done. And so I want to bring that back to the board, have our full board here in January with a little handout. But Renee and the rest of the presenters just did a fantastic job. Wanted to give them a closing compliment. So with that, we're going to do the historical handing over of the gauntlet of the gavel.
As long as he doesn't hit me with it, I'm.
So Jim, wish you good luck
Thank you.
in the next year. And,
Interesting and fun times.
I'll still be your partner on this board.
We'll all be here. It's good times.
Yeah, so why don't you gavel us out?
With that, afraid to hit this and break the table.
Easy.
Don't break the gavel.
Declare the meeting adjourned.
All right, that was something.